My name is Martin Madert with the Witness to War Foundation. It's November 2nd, 2019, and we are in Seattle, Washington for the United States Marine Corps Vietnam Tankers Association reunion. Sir, if you could please state your name and spell it.
My name is Ben Cole, C-O-L-E. The given name was Benny Cole, but I go by Ben. Been going out for a long time. Everybody knows me as Ben. All my friends call me Ben.
And what years were you in the Marine Corps, and more specifically, what years were you in Vietnam?
I was in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps in June of 1965, right out of high school, and then I left the Marine Corps in the middle of 1968, and I was given an early out so I could go to college, and I got out in 1968. And
what rank were you in Vietnam?
I went from a Lance Corporal up to a Sergeant, E5. I basically was I was from the Sergeant to E5. I graduated when I left the Marine Corps. I was a Sergeant E5.
And who'd you serve with overseas?
Well, actually, I was with when I joined the Marine Corps. I'd actually been in the Alabama National Guard during high school, which was kind of an adventure in high school. Well, I joined a Marine Corps Reserve in Montgomery, Alabama, not knowing where I was going. At that point, I didn't know where I was going. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I was looking at the GI Bill in the long run, and always wanted it. Always admired the Marines, so I said, well, I'll just join the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marine Corps, went to Paris Island, where I did pretty good. I got PFC out of boot camp, high shooter, and then I went to Camp Lejeune, went to Camp Geiger for advanced infantry training, and then they tried to get me to ship over. They wanted me to extend my enlistment and become a regular Marine, and I did. I went ahead and signed up because it seemed like a great idea at the time, and I'm kind of glad I did. But one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to be a tanker. That was one thing I requested as part of the recruiting is I wanted to be a tanker, and I wanted to do a med cruise before I went to Vietnam. I knew I was going to Vietnam, and that was kind of the deal I worked out with the recruiter.
What drew you to the tankers?
I'm sorry?
What drew you to tanks? Actually,
when I was in high school, I had a guy that worked with my mother, and he was in the Marine Corps. I admired the guy, and he said, "Well, if you get in the Marine Corps, get in tanks. That way you don't have to walk." And so I took his advice, and I'm glad I did.
So you said you want to do a med cruise before Vietnam, but I also kind of want to jump in and ask what you knew and thought about the Vietnam War.
Well, it was my father, my biological father, was a World War II veteran, and all my uncles were World War II veterans. I had uncles Korean, and so I figured I might as well do my time. Hey, yes, it was a big adventure. So it was. Nobody at that point knew exactly what was going on. It was a war that when I went in there, it was not really a shooting war, but I knew probably that it would be. So, I was going to do my thing. I was going to serve my country. So I joined the Marine Corps.
So to pick it back up, you put in for a med cruise. Did you get that?
Yeah, I did. I went with when I got out of Geiger, I went to 2nd Battalion at Camp Lejeune. A 2nd Tank Battalion, and I got with the med cruise of the first med cruise in 1966. Shipped out of Morehead City and went to where we did several landings in Europe and played war games, and we were on a LSD ship, and I did the whole thing we had one battalion of Marines on the cruise, and we all got seasick, and so we finally got used to the ocean, and then we got over it, and we did a lot of good things. We landed and played war, and then we'd go have liberty and land and play war again, and then we'd go to some place. We did a couple of trips. I got to travel in 6 or 8 different countries during that 6 months. Then we came back to. I got back in August of 1966, and to Camp Lejeune, and then within about 3 months I had orders for Vietnam. and then we went to Camp Pendleton, California, for basic Vietnam. That was camp there. That was training for what they suspected you'd be doing in Vietnam. You know, we had typical infantry training, you know, night maneuvers, and we did that for about 2 or 3 weeks or a month, and we all got together. Well, they put us on a USS General Eltinge, which is a troop ship, and there's about 2,000 Marines on there. I made a lot of friends on that ship, and we shipped out of San Diego on December 7th, 1966. And we proceeded to go across the Pacific. We stopped and waved at Hawaii as we went by. And then we went on to Okinawa, and we got to Okinawa on Christmas Eve, I think, and we had 3 hours liberty. And we landed, I don't know the exact day that we landed in Da Nang, but I think it was right before the first of the year.
What were your first impressions of Vietnam?
It was hot and dusty, lots of I landed in Da Nang. Da Nang was a bustling port. It had an air base there. It was firing combat missions out of there all the time, supply missions, had a big runway. You had jets coming in from the States bringing new troops, offloading them, and taking another load out. But we came in by ship. And they assigned us at that point. They had a big staging area. And I was informed I wasn't going to go to tanks. I was going to go to 4th Battalion, 12th Marines, first provisional. But at that time, I think the Marine Corps was trying to get more artillery units, so they need more artillery. And so they apparently looked at my record and saw I was a member I had trained with 155 howitzers in high school. And so they put me with the 4th Battalion, 12th Marines, who I stayed with for 6 months. And I was shipped up to Phu-Bai, and I'll never forget the first night we finally got there that morning, and you didn't know where you were going for 3 or 4 hours. I was told I was going to 12th Marines. I'm thinking, well, what's going on here? Of course, when you're a lance corporal, you do what you're told to do. In the Marine Corps, you do what you're told to do all the time. But so when I went to Phu-Bai, we got there, and we flew up there, and we got they put us in a truck, and it was dark, and they took us out to the line. Our unit was on the 12th Marines. Our battery was on those lines. They were doing fire missions and stuff. We didn't know where we were. It was quiet, and they put us in this squad tent with our sea bag and a rifle, and we tried to settle in. And we don't know where we are. We're in Vietnam. It's at night, and but they had a fire mission, and the gun tubes that we were going to be working on was right beside the tent. And so they had a fire mission. They didn't tell us that they were fixing to have a fire mission. So they just started firing the guns. And the howitzer was really loud. It scared the crap out of us. We didn't know. After we have 2 or 3 salvos, we realized, oh, okay, that's what it is. But it's kind of a welcome to Vietnam. And so we stayed there for, we had gun pits there, and we did fire missions, and I was a cannoneer. I did. We patrolled our own position. We actually did some patrolling on the outside, but we basically did fire missions.
Tell me about some of the men you were serving with. Who do you remember in the unit?
Well, I got on a ship. Before I left North Carolina, I met Terry Hunter, Guy Wolfenberger, and half a dozen other guys that I can't recall their names right now, but we went over there together. And immediately when we got to Vietnam, they split off and went to tanks. And then I met a whole bunch of new guys there at Phu-Bai. And we moved out of Phu-Bai. We went from different places. We went, with the artillery, basically what you do is you have 4 guns, 4 howitzers, and they take you and put you where they want you to be. You might be on an outpost somewhere by yourself. You might be. We went to 2 or 3 places, dug in, and fire missions, and then we'd move somewhere else and so forth. And for the next 6 months, they put us in a couple places where they split us up, and we had probably we had one place I remember particularly was a little place called PK-17. It was an old French outpost, and we had 2 guns there in an Army Duster unit, and we were in a corner of a ARVN compound. And ARVN, they don't have the, we didn't really trust the guys. I'm sure they were great, but it turned out that they couldn't hold the line. And we had 2 guns there, and we had 2 up about 6 miles away, and we were mutually supporting each other. And we got hit one night there, and they came through the wire in front of us, and they came through the ARVN area. And luckily that we stopped them and were able to. But they continued hitting us off and on for the next. They'd mortar a while, and then sometimes they would probe. We put out ambushes, and it was really.
Could you describe in a little more detail what happened during this battle?
Well, this was I think these were Viet Cong with maybe a few North Vietnamese, and the first night I was up at the outpost basically, and when they got hit, and I was with the unit firing back. The second night I was there as they were to continue to try to overrun the place. But what they basically did was the ARVNs we were at the corner of a ARVN compound, and it was an old French outpost. It stood for Post Kilometer 17. And that's how they marked it. It was about that far away from Hue. It was north of Hue. This was about a year before the big battle at Hue. And there was a village out in front of us, and there were a graveyard. They made graveyards over there. They were circular concrete structures. And they made great little bunkers. And so the VC used these bunkers to kind of bring themselves into the close line. Then the ARVN, in all their wisdom, built a mold around the place, and they got in. They crawled along the moat, and then they came up over the wire at night, snug in the lines, and just ran through the compound. They got through the wire and just tossing charges and bunkers, and they were more of a sapper team than anything else. And while they're mortaring us, and we had the bunker that I was in was knocked. It was blown up. It was blown up, and I wasn't there at that point. But that was a bunker that we constructed the next morning, and they came through there, and we lost 2 Marines. We had 2 Marines killed that night. But we repulsed them. We brought in artillery fire on them and repulsed them, and I think it was probably we got 27 or 28 of them dead, and then we next morning, we brought in more reinforcements, and they continued to mortar us for the next few weeks, but they never really mounted any other more offensive. Then we moved from there. That's about what it was. Basically, what happens is, I remember one incident that was kind of funny there. It was kind of that bunker that was I was on. We were being mortared a couple of nights in a row. The village was right out in front of us, and you have these little devices called pop flares. It's a little long tube like this, and you take the top off and you put the top on the bottom of the tube, and you pop it. You hit it down on the sandbag, and the flare goes up in the air, and it floats down. It illuminates the place, and that's what you do. If you heard a noise and you felt like there's somebody out there, you pop the flare. Well, it was me. We heard something out there, and I popped the flare. Boom! And instead of hitting straight down the bunker, it hit on the side of the bunker, and it bounced out across the yard. The graveyard landed on the hooch on the other side in the village. Landed on the roof of a hooch. We sat there. Hey, man, what'd you do that for? Well, then there's a little glow out there. A little glow. You set that village on fire. I said, oh, no, I didn't mean to. Well, it's burning. And so you hear the Vietnamese out there. But these were Vietnamese people. It wasn't the Vietcong, but the fire. Their village is on fire. It started burning. What are you gonna do? Well, who shut the fire? Who shot the flare? Well, I was a corporal. I think at that point I was a corporal. And the captain came up there, and who set this village on fire? Captain Dowd, and it's burning pretty good by now. I said, well, it was me. He said, well, you're going to be in big trouble, blah, blah, blah. And about that time, that hooch blew up. So apparently they had some ammunition. Somebody had some explosive in the hooch. And so that kind of answered the question, you know. So I didn't get in trouble because apparently there'd been some ammo casualty out there. And anyway, I was with 12th Marines for till July of 60 of that year, 67. And then I got a message that I was supposed to be going to 3rd Tanks. Apparently they had a shortage of tankers, and so they reached out to find out some of the guys that were supposed to be tankers, and I went to Dong Ha. I was assigned a tank. I'd been on a tank in a year. And when last time I was a tank, I was a Lance Corporal. They needed a tank commander, so they promoted me to sergeant and gave me a tank. And luckily, I didn't screw up too badly, I guess. But
what's it like to join a new unit? Even though you have experience in Vietnam, you're in with a bunch of new guys. What was it like?
Well, you know, you consider everybody to be competent. You know, you're Marines. You know, and nobody's perfect, and you know you try to do the best you can. I mean, we all get along. You know, we're there, and I mean, it's not. You really don't know how good somebody is until it comes down to it. And sometimes you never know how good because it doesn't come down to it. Day-to-day activities, and Marine Corps pretty much has a rank structure and a philosophy, and most of the guys get along. They know what you might not be the higher rank, but if you're a good leader, you recognize what people do and what they can do, what they can't do, and everybody gets along. You know, every now and then you'll get a shitbird, and you have to kind of lay the law down, or you know, take care of matters. But I never had a problem with my crew. I had a great crew.
So yeah, who was in 3rd Tanks?
3rd Tanks, well, you know, I had three men on my crew. I had Garrett, I had Turner, and I had Brown. And Barrett was a gunner, and Turner was my loader, and Brown was my driver. And we were together all the time. Well, I take that back. That was eventually the crew that I worked with mostly. But initially, I had put on a tank with the platoon commander, Lieutenant Gilk, in August, and we went out to Charlie 2, and I eventually was, when he left, I eventually evolved to the crew with another tank with these 3 guys I was telling you about. We were at Charlie 2. We took off and drove up to Charlie 2. And from there, we went pulling operations. We did a lot of operations. We would be attached to a particular unit, and then you go out and basically pretty much you would be pretty much the center of their operation. There are people in front of you, and you just a lot of times if it's too thick, you'll push the brush down so they can get through, you know, and you'll just try to sweep an area. You know, it could be 2 tanks, it could be a platoon of tanks, it could be, you know, 2 platoon tanks, depending on who it was, how many, you know, have a company of grunts, you might have a battalion. And mostly what we did was sweep. We weren't sweeping, we'd be dug in the position, like at Charlie 2. We were stationed there until somebody needed us, and we'd go sweep. And we'd go out for a couple of weeks, and then somehow either go to another position or go back to Charlie 2. But it was but I was at Charlie 2 when back in August, when they had a terrible storm to come through that part of the country, and it was I slept on the back of a tank with another guy, Lieutenant Gilt, for 5 or 6 days, and all we had was a poncho, which kept the water from, you know, getting us wet, and we stay wet all the time. But right up the road from Charlie 2 was an outpost between Camlo and Contian. There was a strong point, and it was a normal road through there until there were so many ambushes taking place that they widened it, so 200 yards, so that, you know, that you wouldn't have somebody right on top of you. You had a little bit of room to fire and maneuver, and it was a strong point there. We had several strong points. Charlie 2 was one strong point. I'm sure Charlie 1. Yeah, and they numbered them like that, and it was on the way up to Contian. But the next point between Charlie 2 and Contian was a place where there was a creek, and it became it was a bog. It was a bog. When it rained, it was awful. They actually had put a culvert in there and fix the road so that you could get across there without bogged down. And during this rain, it rained so hard it washed the culvert out and took 2 or 3 Marines with it. They never found a couple of the bodies of guys. And we immediately tried to go up there, and there's another story about that, but we tried to go up there and get some tanks across it, and we lost a tank, and a couple of officers had their careers jeopardized because of this. Because when you lose a tank, we have a tank stranded out somewhere, somebody's got to be responsible for it. Somebody made the decision to go where the mud was. They made the decision to take a tank out and it got stuck. And then you tie down a grunt platoon or 2 or 3 more tanks, and if the NVA see that, that's where they're going to try to get you. But we lost some tanks. We lost a tank or 2 right there, and that was called the washout. That was the washout. You've probably heard of it before. And it became later. It was so bad there that they basically, you could not bridge that little river up. I mean, you could not put a culvert in. They eventually had to put a bridge in there. It was called, and it got hit. I was on the north side of that bridge. Charles Thatcher, we had tanks divided up into platoons. You have 5 tanks. You have 3 tanks, which is a heavy section. You have 2 tanks. Two remaining tanks are the light section. I was supposedly in charge of the light section. Charles Thatcher and I were on that side of the bridge. Charles Thatcher, about 3 months earlier than that, got a Navy Cross at Contian. So, this was the guy that I'm working with. He was a brilliant Marine, a brave Marine, and I was lucky to have him with me. But the night we'd held a position on the north side of the bridge, and it's just been probing, and nothing been happening, and they had just moved, and they were building a bridge. They had the concentration wire up all the way around the bridge, up the hill, and we probably had a battalion of Marines there at any one time. So, but the Vietnamese, since they hit the place, they hit this, and I forgot what day in October of 1967, but we had left that afternoon. I was not there when we left, and I don't know where they saw the tanks had left, and he came through that position plus 3 or 4 other positions, and they overran that position. I didn't even know it happened until 2 or 3 days later when we came back. But it was defended by the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and they were always called the Magnificent Bastards. So they named that bridge Bastards Bridge. And I'll always remember, we were there before it, but the bridge, but we came there after they attacked it, and I spent a lot of time right there.
That's a great story.
And another thing that happened there was that I think we lost a battalion commander, we lost a gunnery sergeant, they lost a lot of the headquarters people, and they lost 2 or 3 brand new lieutenants that had flown in the very day to take over part of they were in the headquarters, and North Vietnamese overran the headquarters and killed those guys. I don't know the exact numbers, but we lost it was right across the bridge from where we were. And they somehow broke through that. I think they swam up the river, swam up the creek, and worked their way in there. But we lost 2 or 3 lieutenants that had just gotten country that day. And the sergeant major and the battalion commander. And it was a hard fought battle that night. But that was in October. And I went on after that. We kept sweeping. I was back at Charlie too. We'd sweep a while, and then we'd come back and replenish, get the tanks replenished, go back to Dong Ha. And we've been sweeping a particular area, trying to find a fight. We had the tanks, and we were looking for them. We overran some bunkers sometimes, had some more of our firefights with them. But we weren't looking for this. We were looking for one particular battalion. I'm forgotten which one it was. And we came back to Dong Ha to replenish and get a shower and get some hot chow, and they even had a little movie theater outside. But you could go out there after the movie, after it gets dark, and after you could watch a movie. And we're sitting there watching the movie, and it was on a little hill, and you could see all the way to DMZ. And I never forget, we hit the word. Well, I forgot platoon. The guys that relieved us got hit, and we were sitting there watching the flares go up. what? And we're just waiting. And so the word got, we're going out early the next morning to get these guys. But we watched for hours and hours the rest of the night watching these flares and the gunfire and everything. So next morning we mounted up and went out. We had mounted up and went out and punched through to them, you know. And we got to Charlie 2, and they had held them off all night. And they lost a bunch of guys, and there were a couple of, it was a bad fight. I lost a real good friend that was killed there that night, Gary Young, who I was on a med cruise with. He was a gunner on a tank and was hit and survived through the night. They flew him out of medevac the next morning. And I never will forget, we got to Charlie 2, and the battle site was Ambush Valley. This was Ambush Valley. And they had made contact the day before, but they had made a contact that night, and so we were going out we had a couple of tanks knocked out. We were going to pull them out and see if we couldn't, you know, we wanted to help them get out of that position. And they were still dropping artillery occasionally on there. The initial assault was going, you know, it wasn't there anymore. The North Vietnamese, the troops, they had left. They had left their bodies there, but we were going to go through out there. And so everybody's kind of congregating at Charlie 2 to go out. And my tank was the first tank. And so we all said, well, let's go, you know. So I head out, and I had this reporter, had a bunch of reporters flying in. And this reporter jumped in the back of my tank. He said, I want to go with you. I said, well, you probably don't want to go out there. You know, it's real dangerous out there. Oh, well, I'll be okay. I said, well, you're not getting in the tank, so, you know, you get on the back, it's up to you. So we start heading out there, and sure enough, we almost get there, and the North Vietnamese start throwing artillery at us, and they bracket us. And I look back, and this reporter, you know, I've never seen anybody, he jumped off the back of that tank, and he could have won the Olympics because he was heading back to Charlie 2. But anyway, I got a good kick out of that. But anyway, we got the tank, actually the tank would crank and run, and we tried to put cables on it, but they had us bracketed with artillery, and so it wasn't worth that. So somebody jumped in the tank and cranked it up and pulled it out there, and we basically got it out there, and we brought our guys out, and they came out. Most of them came out on their own. But that was an exciting day. It really was. That was about, I guess that must have been October of '67. And after that, we kept sweeping and that type of stuff.
So tell me about coming home. What was your homecoming like?
Oh, it was okay. It was great. I mean, you know, it was a great. It was great to come home. You know, I was at Contin, and I went from there. I went to Contin. I spent in Contin. Contin was right up the road there. We dug in there in the mud and the crud for about. And I was supposed to rotate December 6th, and I'm up there in the mud, and we're still taking rounds. And so I wanted to get out of there because, you know, I wanted to come home. And so Sergeant Major Culpepper came up and he said, well, I told him, Sergeant Major, I'm supposed to rotate next week. He said, I'll send somebody else up. So finally, somebody came up to relieve me, and I got on a truck one morning, headed out, and went right through went back through Charlie 2, and I'll never forget, we were driving through the wire at Charlie 2, and the night before, the water buffaloes had got into the minefield, and they were just laying all over the place. And I'm thinking, I'm glad I'm leaving here. So anyway, we got on back, and then I went to, we got to Da Nang, and we all got on the Liberty Bird and flew to Okinawa. Stayed in Okinawa a couple of days and got cleaned up, and then flew into L.A., Los Angeles. And you know, you're wearing your tropical uniform, you know, and I had my ribbons, and I was a sergeant at May 85. I was a 20-year-old sergeant, which I was always proud of, being a mixed sergeant at 20 years, you know, before I was 20 years old. And we were right there at the terminal. All of my buddies we were headed, I forgot who exactly was with me, but we were all split off and go home. And we said, let's go up there and get a drink while we wait for our flight. And so I went up there, and the waitress comes up, and I said, now I want to get I want a scotch and water. She says, can I see your ID? I said, yeah. She says, you're not 21. You can't have a drink. I can't serve you. I said, what? She says, you know, I can't serve you. You're not 21. I said, well, okay, no problem. Bring me a glass of water. I'm happy to be home. I'm not going to complain about anything. So I got my glass of water, and the next day, later on in the afternoon, I flew into Montgomery, Alabama, and well, I flew into Atlanta. Then I flew from Atlanta to Montgomery, and I was and I got on the bus, and I had my old pair of jungle boots and tied to the top of my luggage, and the bus driver, he had an attitude. You can't do that. You can't do that. I said, well, I'll take them off, and I'll just carry them with me. I got home, and my mom and dad didn't know when I was coming. They knew I was en route, and got home, and I said, Mom was glad to see me. One of the guys I grew up with, and I used to bird hunt with when I was a kid. He was a grown man, but he saw me walk. He saw me getting off the bus and picked me up and took me home. And it was kind of nice to be home. That must have been the first part of January '68.
So a couple other questions. What do you want people to remember about the Vietnam War based on your experience today?
That's a tough one. It's a tough one. We were really justified by being there. It didn't turn out right. I think we, it was basically we had a treaty with those people. You can go back to Ho Chi Minh and what happened after World War II, and the French idea that they shouldn't give up the colony like everybody else did. They should have had the right for self-determination, but the French were not going to have that. They still wanted a colony, and they got kicked out of Indochina. But we had an obligation to the people, and I believe if we had had a little bit of press coverage, and the Tet Offensive had not occurred or had not been perceived as being such a good thing for them, we would have probably we might have won that war. We might have been able to it might have turned out differently. But and I can understand. I can understand why it happened. We lost a lot of guys over there, and I guess we should just remember that before we undertake something of that magnitude, we need to really make some hard choices, and that's about what we have to do. But we can't be isolated. We've got to help the people that are trying to have free countries. We've got to help people to try to have democracies. I mean, that's a tall order sometimes, but that's who we are.
Is there any song that if you heard today would take you back to your days in Vietnam?
Do I now?
Is there any song or music?
Oh yeah, the one from let's see here. Well, we got to the animals, of course. We want to get out of this place, and the box tops. I want to get a ticket on an airplane, and then some of the songs that we had in California when I was coming through with the Mamas and Papas, that era. Some of those songs, and every now and then I'll hear another song that I can relate to. But yeah, the box tops is probably the biggest one. Yeah.
Lastly, any final thoughts, words of advice, closing wisdom for anybody watching this in the future?
Not really. I just, they can take my words and kind of make their own conclusions. That's about all I can do. I can really tell.
Well, Ben, I can't thank you enough for taking the time this evening to come by and share your stories with me. It's an honor and a pleasure, but more importantly, thank you so much for your service. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for listening.